Your daughter has been lying to you for 8 months. That's how my attorney, Marcus Thompson, opened our phone call on November 8th, 2024. Not hello, Deborah. Not how are you holding up after your father's passing. Just that. 11 words that shattered the carefully constructed world my daughter had built around me. I set down my coffee mug, the one Alicia bought me last Mother's Day with "World's Best Mom" printed in fading letters, and I smiled. Not the reaction Marcus expected, I'm sure. His voice carried that careful tone lawyers use when they're about to deliver devastating news, the kind that's supposed to make you sit down and brace yourself. "Tell me more," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Deborah," Marcus said, "I need you to understand the severity of what I'm about to tell you. Your daughter, she's been systematically defrauding you. The estate, the will, everything she's told you for the past 8 months has been a lie." I was already sitting at my kitchen table in my modest Denver townhouse, the same place I'd lived for 23 years while working as a systems engineer for NASA's Satellite Communications Division. Had been sitting here since March, really. Since my father, Walter Collins, died and left us his $3.1 million estate. Since Alicia, my Princeton-trained corporate lawyer daughter, had swooped in to handle everything because I was supposedly too grief-stricken to think clearly about complex legal matters. But what Marcus told me next made everything crystallize into sharp, painful focus. "She forged your father's will, Deborah, and she had you declared mentally incompetent to contest it. The power of attorney documents she filed are dated March 17th. Your father died on March 5th. She couldn't have gotten his signature 12 days after he was buried." I opened my laptop, the same ThinkPad I'd used for 15 years of satellite trajectory calculations, and pulled up the Wells Fargo statements I'd been reviewing that morning. There it was, clear as telemetry data. March 18th, 2024, a $53,000 transfer from Dad's account to Alicia's personal checking. Then another on March 20th for $28,000. Then March 23rd, $31,000. The pattern continued like a descending orbital path, systematic and deliberate. "There's more," Marcus continued, and I could hear him adjusting papers on his end of the line. "She submitted a psychiatric evaluation to the probate court, claiming you suffer from early-onset Alzheimer's and severe depression that makes you legally incapable of handling financial affairs." "Who's the doctor?" I asked, already knowing the answer would be problematic. "Dr. Raymond Castellano. He supposedly examined you on October 18th at his office in Cherry Creek." I flipped through my desk calendar, the paper kind I still preferred despite decades of digital project management. October 18th showed a clear notation in my handwriting. Houston Johnson Space Center, 9 a.m. 4 p.m., Satellite Systems Review Panel. I had the boarding passes, the hotel receipt, the signed attendance sheet from the conference. "Marcus," I said slowly, "I've never met any Dr. Castellano. I was in Houston that entire day, presenting to a review panel about orbital debris tracking systems." "I know," he replied. "I called his office this morning. The receptionist said they have no record of you as a patient." When I pressed harder, she admitted that Dr. Castellano doesn't do forensic psychiatric evaluations. He's a general practitioner who retired 6 months ago. The pieces assembled in my mind like a satellite schematic, each component connecting to reveal the complete system. Alicia had systematically removed me from every inheritance decision. The lawyer meetings I wasn't invited to because they were just preliminary. The estate planning sessions she'd handled alone because I was too emotional. The way she'd squeeze my shoulder whenever I asked detailed questions, saying, "Mom, don't worry about the technical stuff. That's literally what I do for a living. Technical stuff." As if a woman who'd spent 32 years calculating satellite trajectories couldn't understand basic probate law. "What does the real will say?" I asked Marcus. That's the problem, Deborah. The original document is missing. All we have is Alicia's version filed with the probate court. According to her documents, your father left you 18% of the estate, approximately $550,000. Alicia gets 78%. The remaining 4% goes to the Denver Science Museum. I did the mental calculation instantly, the way I'd done thousands of trajectory computations. Alicia stood to inherit $2.4 million. A significant upgrade from the equal split Dad had always promised both of us. The split he'd discussed with me in detail 2 years ago when he'd updated his estate planning after Mom died. She's been spending it already, I said, watching through my kitchen window as a silver Porsche Taycan pulled into the visitor parking across the street. Price tag, $138,000. Alicia's early birthday present to herself, apparently from money that should have been split between us equally. Deborah, there's something else. The notary public whose seal appears on these documents, Patricia Morales. I spoke with her yesterday afternoon. She says she never notarized anything for Alicia Collins. Someone forged her seal. Alicia's car door opened, and she stepped out, designer handbag slung over her shoulder. Bottega Veneta, if I wasn't mistaken, retail price around $18,000. Interesting how a corporate attorney's salary, even a good one, suddenly afforded such extravagant luxuries. Her entire outfit probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. She's here, I said quietly into the phone. Don't confront her yet, Marcus warned. We need more evidence before we can file a formal challenge. If she knows we're investigating, she might move assets offshore or destroy documents. I won't confront her, I promised. But Marcus, start building our case. I want every document analyzed, every timeline verified, every inconsistency documented with the same precision I used for satellite launch windows. What are you thinking? I'm thinking my daughter believes I'm too simple-minded to notice she's been stealing from me for 8 months. I'm thinking she's confused my kindness for stupidity and my trust for incompetence. The doorbell rang, 2 short chimes that used to make me smile. She's about to learn something important, I continued. NASA doesn't hire incompetent engineers. We're the people who put satellites in precise orbits 35,000 kilometers above Earth. We calculate trajectories that have to be perfect because there's no room for error in space. Alicia's key turned in my front door lock, a presumption that would have bothered me 8 months ago. Today, I welcomed it as evidence of her sense of entitlement, her assumption that my home was simply an extension of her domain. And Marcus, I said, my daughter's about to discover that the same systematic thinking that keeps satellites from falling out of the sky works equally well for documenting fraud. Mom. Alicia's voice carried that practiced warmth she'd perfected since law school, the tone she probably used with difficult clients who needed managing. I brought lunch from that new fusion place you mentioned wanting to try. She appeared in my kitchen doorway, holding a bag from Matsuhisa, Denver's most expensive Japanese restaurant. $68 for 2 entrees according to the logo on the bag, plus another $40 for the premium sake she'd probably added. Another charge on Dad's estate credit card, no doubt. The card she'd assured me was only for legitimate estate expenses. That's thoughtful, sweetheart, I said, gesturing to the chair across from my small kitchen table. The same table where I'd helped her with calculus homework 20 years ago, back when she'd still asked for my help with complex problems. Alicia sat down, crossing her legs in what I now recognized as $1,200 Manolo Blahnik heels. Her entire outfit, the Armani suit, the Bottega bag, the Italian shoes, probably cost more than I spent on myself in 6 months. But I kept my expression neutral, the same face I'd used in countless NASA review meetings when junior engineers presented flawed calculations. How are you feeling today, Mom? You look tired. Maybe you're not sleeping well again. There it was, delivered so smoothly, I almost missed it. The setup. Plant the seed of my supposedly deteriorating mental and physical state. Establish the narrative of the declining, grief-addled mother who can't handle stress or complex decisions. I'm fine, honey. Just reviewing some paperwork. Old habits from NASA. You know how we engineers are about documentation. Her eyes flicked to my closed laptop, and I saw the micro-expression cross her face. Curiosity mixed with something else. Concern, maybe. Or was it calculation? Mom, you really don't need to worry about paperwork anymore. I told you I'm handling all of Dad's estate matters. It's literally what I do for a living, right? Corporate law involves extensive estate planning work. Does it? I thought you specialized in mergers and acquisitions at Bradley and Stanton. Another micro-expression, this one closer to annoyance. I do, but estate law isn't that different. Same principles of asset management, fiduciary responsibility, legal documentation. I've been taking additional courses to make sure I handle everything properly for our family. Additional courses. Expensive courses, no doubt. Courses funded by estate money that should have been split between us. That's very dedicated of you, I said, opening the takeout bag. The smell of expensive sushi filled my modest kitchen. Tell me about the will again. I want to make sure I understand exactly what Dad wanted. Alicia's smile tightened, just barely. If you weren't looking for it, you'd miss it entirely. But I'd spent 3 decades reading telemetry data for micro-deviations, and my daughter's face was considerably easier to read than satellite sensor output. Mom, we've been through this multiple times. Grandpa knew you'd want a simple, comfortable life. He left you enough to maintain your lifestyle, pay off the house, maybe take a nice vacation. He was protecting you from the burden of managing millions. Protecting me from my own inheritance. Interesting framing. And the power of attorney, I pressed gently. When exactly did Dad sign that? Mom, her voice took on that edge of exasperation she probably used with particularly slow clients. These details don't matter. What matters is that everything is being handled correctly, professionally, legally. She leaned forward, and her tone shifted to something that made my chest tighten. Sometimes, Mom, we have to trust the people who understand these complicated legal systems. People who've been trained specifically for this kind of work. It's not like engineering where everything follows simple mathematical formulas. Simple mathematical formulas. As if orbital mechanics, satellite trajectory calculations, and gravitational physics were simple. As if the work that kept billion-dollar satellites functioning in space was somehow less complex than basic estate planning. That's when I understood how deep this really went. Alicia hadn't just stolen money from me. She'd stolen something more fundamental. My competence, my dignity, my right to be treated as an intelligent, capable adult who'd spent her entire career solving problems most people couldn't even comprehend. But she'd made one crucial mistake in her elaborate fraud. She'd confused my kindness with weakness. She'd mistaken my grief over losing Dad for cognitive decline. She'd assumed that because I didn't flaunt my intelligence, I didn't possess it. You know what, honey? You're probably right. I forced a smile that felt like it might crack my face. I should just trust you to handle everything. After all, you're the lawyer in the family. Relief flooded Alicia's features, so obvious it was almost painful to watch. Exactly, Mom. That's exactly the right attitude. Just focus on taking care of yourself, spending time with friends, maybe joining that book club Mrs. Chen keeps inviting you to. Let me handle the complicated financial stuff. She reached across the table and patted my hand, the gesture so condescending I had to work to keep my expression neutral. This will all be settled soon, and then you'll have your inheritance. $550,000 is more than enough for a comfortable retirement. Dad made sure of that. $550,000 out of $3.1 million. While she walked away with $2.4 million for being born and having a law degree. I appreciate you looking out for me, I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Alicia stood, checking her phone, her attention already shifting to whatever important corporate matter required her attention. I should get going. Quarterly review meeting at the firm this afternoon. Big merger closing tomorrow, lots of paperwork to finalize. She paused at the door, turning back with what I'm sure she thought was a caring expression. Mom, you know I love you, right? Everything I'm doing is to protect you, to make sure Dad's legacy is managed properly. I know, sweetheart. I know exactly what you're doing. She smiled, completely missing the double meaning in my words, and let herself out. Through the window, I watched her slide into that silver Porsche, watched her check her makeup in the rearview mirror, watched her drive away in a car worth more than some people's houses. A car purchased with money she'd stolen from her own mother. I opened my laptop and pulled up the document Marcus had emailed me before Alicia arrived. A template for systematic evidence collection, the kind used in corporate fraud cases. Time to treat this like any other engineering problem. Define the parameters, gather the data, analyze the results, and present conclusions that were mathematically irrefutable. My phone buzzed. Text message from Alicia, sent before she'd even left my neighborhood. Thanks for lunch, Mom. Remember, don't stress about the estate stuff. Let the professionals handle it. Get some rest. You looked really tired today. Get some rest. More narrative building. More seeds planted for her story about my declining mental state. I pulled out a new engineering notebook, the grid paper kind I'd used for 3 decades of calculations. At the top of the first page, I wrote in careful block letters, Evidence Log, Estate Fraud Investigation, Alicia Collins, Subject. Below that, I started documenting everything, the timeline of Dad's death versus the power of attorney date, the unexplained bank transfers, the luxury purchases that didn't match a corporate lawyer's salary, the fictional psychiatric evaluation, every lie, every manipulation, every piece of evidence that my brilliant, Princeton-educated daughter had never once considered her simple engineer mother might discover. Because that was Alicia's fundamental miscalculation. She'd built her entire fraud on the assumption that I was too grief-stricken, too unsophisticated, too intellectually limited to notice what she was doing. She'd looked at my modest house, my paid-off Honda, my practical lifestyle, and assumed I lacked the capability to understand complex schemes. But NASA doesn't hire simple people. We're the engineers who calculate orbits with precision measured in meters over distances of thousands of kilometers. We're the people who design systems that have to work perfectly because failure means losing satellites worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And now, I was going to apply that same systematic precision to documenting exactly how my daughter had stolen my inheritance while pretending to care about my well-being. 3 days later, Alicia called me at 9:52 p.m. I noted the exact time in my evidence log, along with a notation about the lateness of the call. In my experience, people who called after 9:30 at night were either dealing with emergencies or operating from a position of anxiety. Mom, we need to talk about your expectations. No greeting, no how are you doing, just straight into what was clearly a prepared conversation. I opened a fresh page in my notebook and wrote the date and time at the top. What kind of expectations, honey? About the inheritance. I've been getting some concerning calls from your friends. Apparently, you've been telling people you're expecting to inherit a significant portion of Grandpa's estate. I hadn't told anyone anything, but Alicia's paranoia was revealing. Someone had said something, or she'd simply projected her own guilt into imagined scenarios. "I thought I was inheriting half," I said calmly. "Dad and I discussed it 2 years ago when he updated his will after Mom died." Her laugh came through the phone sharp and brittle. "Mom, you're not equipped to handle that kind of money. Grandpa knew that. It's why he structured things differently in his final will." Structured things differently. Interesting euphemism for completely rewrote without my knowledge. How am I not equipped, Alicia? I managed NASA project budgets of $40 million. I tracked assets worth hundreds of millions in orbit. I think I can handle basic financial management. "That's different," she said, and I could hear the condescension dripping through the phone line. "That was government work with oversight committees and established protocols. Managing a personal estate requires sophisticated financial knowledge, tax strategy, investment portfolio management, philanthropic planning. These aren't concepts you learn from engineering textbooks." I wrote down her exact words. Direct quote, "These aren't concepts you learn from engineering textbooks." So what did Dad leave me? Enough to maintain your current lifestyle very comfortably. The house is paid off. You'll receive approximately $550,000 plus some personal effects. It's more than adequate for a woman your age living alone. More than adequate for a woman my age. I underlined that phrase twice. And you get the rest. I get the responsibility of managing the family legacy properly, making sure the money is invested wisely, donated to appropriate causes, used to benefit future generations. Grandpa trusted me with that responsibility, Mom. He knew I had the education and expertise to handle it correctly. Responsibility. She called inheriting $2.4 million a responsibility while I got adequacy. "Alicia, Dad told me repeatedly we'd split everything equally, 50-50. I was there when he said it, multiple times. Mom." Her voice shifted to that patient tone people use with confused elderly relatives. "You're remembering things wrong. The grief, the stress of losing him, it's affecting your memory. Dr. Castellano documented this exact issue in his evaluation. I'd like to speak with Dr. Castellano." Silence stretched for 3 seconds. 4. 5. "That's not necessary, Mom. We have all the documentation the court requires." "What's his office address? I'll schedule my own appointment for a second opinion." "Mom, you don't need another evaluation. Dr. Castellano is very respected in his field. The court has already accepted his findings." "When did I see him the first time, Alicia? Walk me through that appointment. I want to make sure I'm remembering it correctly." Another pause, longer this time, October 18th. "Don't you remember? I drove you there myself. We had lunch afterward at that Vietnamese place you like. I was in Houston on October 18th, presenting to the Johnson Space Center Satellite Systems Review Panel. I have boarding passes, hotel receipts, and a signed attendance sheet with 23 NASA personnel who can confirm I was there all day." More silence. I could almost hear her recalculating, trying to find a way around the discrepancy. "You must be confused about the dates, Mom. Maybe it was a different day. The important thing is that you were evaluated, and Dr. Castellano determined that you need support with complex financial decisions." Support. Another interesting word choice. "Alicia, I want to see the original will, the one Dad kept in his safe." "There is no safe, Mom. You're thinking of something else, maybe from years ago." "The Sentinel safe," I said calmly. "Black, approximately 18 inches square. He kept it in his bedroom closet next to Mom's old hat boxes. I helped him organize those documents when he moved into the assisted living facility." "Mom, there was no safe. You're confusing details, maybe mixing up memories from different times." This is exactly the kind of thing Dr. Castellano warned might happen. So I'm imagining a safe that I physically touched, that I watched Dad open, that I helped him organize with my own hands. Mom, her voice sharpened, do you really think a probate judge is going to believe a 57-year-old woman with documented cognitive decline over a Princeton-trained attorney with proper legal documentation? There it was. The threat delivered clearly. Documented cognitive decline from a doctor I'd never met. Are you threatening me, Alicia? I'm explaining reality. The will is legal. The power of attorney is valid. The psychiatric evaluation is on file with the court. If you try to contest this, you will lose. And Mom, you'll embarrass yourself publicly in the process. What if I have evidence that you forged documents? She actually laughed. What evidence could you possibly have? Mom, you could barely function after Grandpa died. You didn't even attend the probate filing because you were too emotional. I had to manage everything because you were incapable of thinking clearly. Maybe I should hire my own attorney. With what money? Her voice turned cold, clinical. Your checking account has $4,200 in it. Estate attorneys charge $600 an hour minimum. Do the math, Mom. Oh wait, that's right, you're good at math. So, calculate how many hours of legal representation you can afford. She'd checked my bank balance. Of course she had. Besides, she continued, any competent lawyer will tell you the same thing I'm telling you. The documentation is solid. The medical evaluation is conclusive. You don't have a case. We'll see. Mom, please. Her voice softened, shifted back to false concern. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Accept what Grandpa wanted. Take your $550,000 and enjoy your retirement. Stop questioning decisions made by people with expertise you simply don't have. People with expertise I don't have. From a woman who'd never calculated a satellite orbit, never designed a communication system, never solved a differential equation that kept $1 billion asset from falling out of the sky. That's when it crystallized completely. This wasn't about money. This was about power and superiority. About Alicia's fundamental belief that her Ivy League education made her inherently smarter, more capable, more deserving than her mother who'd merely spent 3 decades doing rocket science. After Alicia hung up, I sat in Dad's old recliner for exactly 19 minutes. I timed it, because that's what engineers do when we need to think clearly. We don't react emotionally. We analyze systematically. The facts were crystalline in their clarity. Alicia had forged legal documents. She'd invented a psychiatric evaluation using a real doctor's name without his knowledge. She was spending inheritance money before probate had even closed. And she believed I was too incompetent, too grief-stricken, too intellectually inferior to stop her. The question wasn't whether to fight. The question was how to fight most effectively. I walked to Dad's bedroom in my townhouse, the room where he'd stayed during his final visits before moving to assisted living. Alicia had cleaned it out after his funeral, taking his watch collection, his Navy medals, even his reading glasses. But she'd missed something, because she didn't think like an engineer. Engineers understand structural integrity and hidden spaces. We see buildings and furniture not as solid objects, but as systems with voids and cavities. Dad had been a civil engineer before retirement. He understood this too. Behind his old dresser, I found what I was looking for. A baseboard that had always sat slightly loose, a gap I'd noticed years ago and mentioned fixing. But Dad had smiled and said, "Some things are better left as they are, Debbie." I pried the baseboard off carefully. Inside the wall cavity, wrapped in waterproof plastic and sealed with engineer's tape, was Dad's leather document folder, the one Alicia had searched the entire assisted living apartment for and never found. I opened it with hands that shook slightly, not from age but from anticipation. There it was. Dad's real will, properly witnessed and notarized on January 22, 2024, barely 6 weeks before his death. I recognized the notary's name immediately. Patricia Morales, the same woman whose forged signature appeared on Alicia's fraudulent documents. To my daughter, Deborah Marie Collins, 50% of all assets, in recognition of her lifetime of dedication, intelligence, and unwavering integrity. She has always made me proud. To my granddaughter, Alicia Patricia Collins, 50% of all assets, with the hope that she will use this inheritance to build a life of substance rather than appearance, of generosity rather than acquisition. 50% each, not 18% for me and 78% for her. Equal partners in Dad's legacy, exactly as he'd always promised. But there was more. A handwritten addendum in Dad's careful engineering script, dated February 28th, just 5 days before his death. If Alicia contests this equal distribution or attempts to manipulate these terms, her portion shall be reduced to 25%, with the additional 25% donated to the Denver Science Museum in support of programs that encourage young women to pursue careers in STEM fields. My daughter Deborah spent her life proving that women belong in engineering and science. Any granddaughter of mine should honor that legacy, not exploit it. 25%. Dad had anticipated this. He'd known his granddaughter well enough to include a consequence clause for exactly the kind of behavior she was now demonstrating. I photographed every page with my phone, making sure the timestamps and metadata were clear. Then I called Marcus Thompson. "I found the original will," I said when he answered. "Hidden in my father's document folder behind a loose baseboard in his old bedroom. Alicia gets 50%, not 78%. I get 50%, not 18%. We were supposed to split everything equally." Marcus whistled low. "That changes everything, Deborah. We can file a contest immediately, present the original will to Judge Martinez." "No," I said. "No, we're not going to rush this." "What do you mean?" "We're going to let Alicia continue digging. Every fraudulent transaction, every forged document, every lie she tells gives us more evidence. When we finally go to court, I want the case to be so overwhelming that Judge Martinez has no choice but to refer it for criminal prosecution." "Deborah, that's risky. Every day we wait, Alicia could move more money offshore, create more complications in recovering assets." I looked at Dad's will again, at his careful handwriting in the margin notes. He'd drawn a small satellite diagram next to one paragraph, an inside joke about my career. "Marcus, my daughter thinks I'm a simple woman who doesn't understand complex legal systems. She spent 8 months constructing an elaborate fraud based on that assumption. Let's see how that assumption holds up under systematic scrutiny. What's your plan?" "Full documentation. I want every transaction tracked, every forged document analyzed, every contradiction documented. When we go to court, I want 52 pieces of evidence, not 47. I want the case to be so methodical, so thorough, so mathematically precise that no judge, no jury, no appeals court could ever question the conclusions." "Why 52 specifically?" "Because that's how many weeks there are in a year, and Alicia has been lying to me for 32 of them." 52 pieces of evidence feels appropriately systematic. Marcus laughed, but it was the laugh of a man who just realized his client was more formidable than he'd initially assessed. "You've thought this through. I've spent 32 years designing satellite systems that have to function perfectly in the vacuum of space. If one calculation is wrong, if one component fails, you lose hundreds of millions of dollars and years of work. This is the same principle. Build the case so thoroughly that failure is impossible. What's the first step?" "Evidence collection. I need complete bank records going back 18 months, not just the 8 months since Dad died. I want security footage from Wells Fargo on March 16th when Alicia made that first fraudulent transfer. I want phone records showing who she coordinated with to forge these documents. I want everything. That's going to take time and money. I have time. Probate hearing isn't until December 15th. That gives us 5 weeks. And as for money, I've got my NASA pension and consulting income. This is worth every dollar. What if Alicia gets suspicious? She won't. I'm going to be exactly the confused, grief-stricken mother she expects me to be. Let her think she's won. Meanwhile, we'll document every crime with the same precision I used for satellite launch trajectories. I looked at Dad's will one more time, at the addendum reducing Alicia's inheritance if she tried to manipulate the system. Dad had understood his granddaughter's character flaws better than I'd wanted to admit. And then, Marcus, when we have everything documented, when the evidence is mathematically irrefutable, we're going to present it all publicly in front of Judge Eleanor Martinez. Let Alicia explain to someone who spent 23 years on the bench exactly how a Princeton lawyer thought she could defraud her own mother. November 17th, 7:38 a.m., I called Alicia from Dad's old landline, the number she'd probably forgotten even existed. The number that wouldn't show up as Mom on her caller ID, just an unfamiliar Denver area code that might make her answer more carefully. Hello? Her voice carried that professional attorney tone she used with unknown callers. Alicia, it's Mom. I'm at Dad's old apartment going through some final boxes the management company just released to me. Silence for 2 beats. Mom, why are you at Grandpa's apartment? I already cleared everything out months ago. The management found some boxes in the storage unit. They called me last week. I drove over this morning to sort through them. What kind of boxes? Just personal items, old photos, some paperwork. But Alicia, I found something interesting. I could hear her breathing change, that slight acceleration that betrayed anxiety no matter how controlled her voice remained. What did you find? Bank statements from Dad's personal account. They show some unusual activity in March, right after he died. Pause. 3 seconds. 4. What do you mean by unusual? Large transfers. March 18th, $53,000 withdrawn. March 20th, $28,000. March 23rd, $31,000. All made out to someone with the initials AC. Mom, those were legitimate estate expenses, funeral costs, legal fees, administrative charges. I had power of attorney, remember? I was authorized to make those transfers. Right. The power of attorney dated March 17th. Yes, exactly. Her voice had that edge of relief, thinking I was confirming her story. For a man who died on March 5th, the silence stretched so long I thought the connection had dropped. Mom, you're getting confused about the dates again. The power of attorney was signed before Grandpa died. The transactions just processed later due to banking delays. Banking delays of 12 days? I kept my voice gentle, curious rather than accusatory. That seems unusual for electronic transfers. It's complicated, Mom. Estate banking procedures have specific protocols that, look, this is exactly why I handle these matters. The technical details would just confuse you. Could you help me understand something else then? What? There's a charge here to Portia Denver, March 25th, $138,000. What was that for? Dead silence. I actually checked my phone screen to confirm the call was still connected. That must be an error, a clerical mistake by the bank. It's being corrected. When? Soon. Very soon. Mom, why are you going through Grandpa's financial records? I told you I'm handling all of this. I'm just trying to understand where Dad's money went. There's also a charge here to Bottega Veneta for $18,000 and something called Vista Casino Club for $27,000. Her voice turned sharp, the professional mask cracking. Mom, those statements must be wrong. Maybe they're old, from before Grandpa died. They're all dated between March 18th and May 30th. All after the funeral. All after you told me the estate accounts were frozen pending probate. Mom, I need you to stop looking through those papers. You're going to confuse yourself with incomplete information. I'm confused already, honey. Help me understand. How does a corporate lawyer afford a $138,000 car on her salary? That was, I've been saving, I have investments. What investments, specifically? Mom. Her voice cut like glass. Stop going through those papers right now. There it was. No more patient daughter managing her confused mother. Just raw command. Why should I stop? Because you don't understand what you're looking at. These are complex financial instruments, estate management procedures, legal disbursements that require specialized knowledge to interpret correctly. Specialized knowledge. I see. Alicia, could you come over? Help me make sense of all these numbers? Another long pause. I can't today. I'm in court all afternoon. Which courthouse? Just various hearings. Corporate matters. Mom, don't come to any courthouse looking for me. I'll be moving between buildings all day. Interesting. Alicia, who never missed an opportunity to brag about important court appearances, suddenly didn't want me anywhere near any courthouse. Okay, but could you explain one more charge? There's something here for $9,200 to Dr. Raymond Castellano, Psychiatric Services, October 18th. The silence lasted so long I began counting seconds. 15, 20, 25. Alicia, you still there? That was your evaluation fee, Mom. $9,000 for one appointment? That seems expensive. It was a comprehensive assessment. Multiple sessions, detailed testing, written reports. These forensic evaluations are very thorough. I thought you said it was just one session on October 18th. No, there were follow-up consultations, phone calls, report writing. These things take time. Could I get copies of Dr. Castellano's reports? I'd like to understand what he found, what diagnosis he gave. That's not necessary. The court has everything they need. But I'd like to know what's supposedly wrong with my brain, Alicia. What did he diagnose me with? Her voice cracked slightly. Mom, let's not focus on negative medical terminology. The important thing is that you're getting appropriate support. What diagnosis? Early-stage Alzheimer's with episodes of confusion and significant memory impairment. That sounds serious. Maybe I should get a second opinion from my own neurologist. No. Too fast, too loud. I mean, that would just complicate things legally. Different doctors might have conflicting opinions, and that could delay probate. Delay probate or expose the truth? Mom, I really need to go. I'm due in court in 20 minutes. Which courtroom again? Courtroom 4C, Federal Building. I made a note. There was no courtroom 4C in Denver's Federal Building. It only went up to 3D. One last question about this Porsche charge. When exactly are you planning to return that car? What car? The $138,000 Porsche Taycan you bought with estate money. The silver one you've been driving for 6 months. Complete silence. Alicia? Mom, I don't know what you think you found, but you're misinterpreting everything. Those statements must be forgeries or banking errors. I would never use estate money for personal purchases. So you don't own a Porsche? I have a car, yes, but I bought it with my own money. My savings from years of careful financial planning. $138,000 worth of savings on a corporate attorney's salary with student loans. Mom, I don't have to justify my financial decisions to you. You're acting paranoid and suspicious. This is exactly the kind of behavior Dr. Castellano warned might develop as the Alzheimer's progresses. The doctor I never met. The doctor you don't remember meeting. There's a difference, Mom. And there it was. Her final defense. My supposedly failing memory against her documented lies. Alicia, honey, my memory is fine. I remember every satellite I helped launch. I remember every calculation I ever made. I remember Dad telling me we'd split the inheritance 50-50. I remember all of it very clearly. Mom, that's what everyone with memory problems says. They don't know they're forgetting things. That's the nature of the disease. I smiled, looking at my notebook where I documented every contradiction, every timeline impossibility, every defensive reaction. You're probably right, I said softly. Good thing I've been writing everything down. Engineers are very good at documentation. For the first time in our conversation, Alicia's voice shook. Writing what down? Everything. Dates, times, amounts, bank statements, transaction records. You know how we NASA engineers are about keeping detailed logs. It's second nature after 3 decades of mission documentation. Mom, you need to stop this investigation. It's not healthy for you. You're becoming obsessive. Actually, Alicia, I think this is the healthiest thing I've done in months. It's giving me purpose, clarity, something to focus on besides grief. Dad, her voice rose slightly, catching herself mid-sentence. She'd almost called me Dad. Mom, you're making this so much harder than it needs to be. Am I? Or am I just asking reasonable questions about Dad's money? Listen to yourself. Listen to how paranoid you sound. This is textbook dementia behavior, creating elaborate conspiracy theories, seeing patterns that aren't there. I teach pattern recognition to junior engineers. Alicia, I'm actually very good at seeing patterns. And the pattern I'm seeing here is very clear. What pattern? A daughter who forged documents, invented medical evaluations, and is stealing her mother's inheritance while pretending to care about her well-being. You can't prove any of that. You're just a confused woman making wild accusations. We'll see what a judge thinks about the proof I'm gathering. The line went dead. I set down the phone and opened my laptop. Time to call Marcus and start subpoenaing those bank records officially. Time to request security footage from Wells Fargo. Time to contact Dr. Tufing. The Dr. Somley, Castellano's office, and get documentation that he'd never evaluated me. Because Alicia had just made her critical error. She'd underestimated her mother's methodical mind, assuming that kindness meant stupidity and trust meant incompetence. She'd built her entire fraud on the foundation that I was too simple to understand what she was doing. But NASA doesn't hire simple people. We're the engineers who calculate trajectories across millions of miles. We're the people who design systems where a single decimal point error means mission failure. We document everything because in space, there's no room for assumptions or guesswork. And now I was going to document Alicia's fraud with that same systematic precision. November 24th, 2:17 p.m., Alicia showed up at my townhouse unannounced, which told me everything about her mental state. Controlled people schedule meetings. Desperate people make surprise visits. Mom, we need to talk. Right now. She didn't wait for permission, just walked into my living room like she owned it. Her usual polished appearance had cracks in it. Hair slightly mussed, makeup not quite perfect, the Bottega bag gripped too tightly in her hands. About what, honey? About this obsession with Grandpa's financial records. It needs to stop. You're making yourself sick with paranoia and conspiracy theories. I looked up from my newspaper, The Wall Street Journal financial section spread across my coffee table. I wouldn't call it obsession, more like due diligence. Mom, you're acting like I'm some kind of criminal, like I've done something wrong. Do you understand how hurtful that is? Have you done something wrong? The question hung between us like a tripwire. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Her voice rose slightly. This accusatory thinking, these wild theories about forged documents and stolen money, they're symptoms of the cognitive decline. Dr. Castellano documented. The doctor who doesn't exist. The doctor you don't remember meeting. Alicia. I called every Dr. Raymond Castellano in Colorado. There are 3. One is a dermatologist in Boulder. One is a pediatrician in Colorado Springs. One is a retired general practitioner in Grand Junction who hasn't seen patients in 8 months. None of them have ever heard of you or me. She shifted in her chair, and I watched her lawyer training kick in, searching for the explanation that would patch the hole in her story. Maybe he practices under a different name professionally. Maybe it was a consultation through another medical group. The details aren't important, Mom. What matters is that you were evaluated and found to have significant cognitive impairment. Show me his office address. I'll drive there right now and ask to see my medical records. You can't just show up demanding records. There are HIPAA protocols, privacy procedures. Those procedures include giving patients copies of their own medical files. Any doctor who evaluated me would have to provide documentation if I requested it, so give me his address. I don't remember the exact location. It was months ago. October 18th. You said you drove me there yourself. Surely you remember where you drove. Mom, this interrogation style, this aggressive questioning, it's not normal behavior. You're proving exactly what Dr. Castellano warned about. Paranoid thinking, inability to trust family members, obsessive focus on perceived injustices. Perceived injustices. Interesting choice of words. I pulled out a manila envelope from under my newspaper. Actually, I had this analyzed yesterday. Maybe you can help me understand it. Her face went pale. What analyzed? The power of attorney you filed. The one supposedly signed by Dad. On March 17th. I had a forensic handwriting expert examine it. You had it analyzed? Her voice cracked on the last word. The signature doesn't match any known samples of Dad's handwriting. In fact, the analyst said it shows characteristics consistent with someone attempting to forge a signature while looking at an example. Someone who got most of the letters right but couldn't quite replicate the natural flow of his writing. Those tests aren't reliable. Handwriting changes when people are sick, under stress, dying. Grandpa was under enormous stress in his final days. Dad wasn't sick when he died, Alicia. Sudden heart attack. The cardiologist said his heart just stopped. No prolonged illness, no stress-induced decline. He was healthy until he wasn't. He was still dealing with financial pressures, end-of-life concerns, grief over losing Grandma. What financial pressures? He had $3.1 million in assets and no debt. His assisted living costs were covered by his pension. What exactly was causing him financial stress? Mom, you were always too trusting to understand the complex financial worries wealthy people face. There it was again, too trusting, too simple, too unsophisticated to understand. Say what you mean, Alicia. I'm too trusting to understand what exactly. Her composure fractured. You were a good engineer, Mom. Very good at your technical work. But engineering isn't law. It's not finance. It's not estate planning. These are sophisticated fields that require advanced education, specialized training. Sophisticated fields like forgery? I never forged anything. Like inventing psychiatric evaluations? That evaluation is legitimate. Like stealing $2.4 million from your own mother? She stood abruptly, her Bottega bag falling to the floor. I'm not stealing anything. I'm managing a complex estate according to Grandpa's wishes and legal requirements that you're too. She stopped herself. Too what, Alicia? Finish the sentence. Too stupid? Too old? Too cognitively impaired? Silence. Too what? You're too emotional to handle this rationally, Mom. You're letting grief cloud your judgment. I laughed. Actually laughed. Alicia, I haven't raised my voice once in this conversation. You're the one standing up, dropping your purse, struggling to maintain composure. Who's being emotional? She looked around my living room, at Dad's old engineering textbooks still on my shelves, at the modest furniture I'd owned for decades, at the framed photo of me receiving my NASA Achievement Award. Mom, look at this place. Look at your life. You live on a pension and Social Security. You drive a 12-year-old Honda. You clip grocery coupons and shop at discount stores. You think you can handle managing millions of dollars? You think you understand tax implications, investment vehicles, estate planning complexities? I think I understand theft when I see it. Her mask dropped completely. You were always like this, always suspicious of anyone more successful than you, always resentful of people who achieved more, who understood more, who operated at higher levels than basic engineering calculations. Don't you dare diminish what I did for 32 years. What you did? Her voice turned to ice. Mom, you were a satellite engineer, technical labor. Important work, sure, but not leadership, not strategic thinking. Not the kind of sophisticated intellectual work that qualifies someone to manage significant wealth. I spent 3 decades keeping billion-dollar satellites functioning in orbit. I calculated trajectories that had to be perfect to within meters over distances of 35,000 kilometers. One error, one miscalculation, and hundreds of millions of dollars and years of work would be lost. Don't talk to me about sophisticated intellectual work. That's different. How? Because it's following formulas, applying established mathematical principles. Anyone with a decent math background could do it given enough training. Anyone with a decent math background. As if orbital mechanics and gravitational physics were simple arithmetic. Get out. What? Get out of my house, Alicia. Right now. Mom, you're being irrational. I'm being clear-headed for the first time in 8 months. You came into my home to explain why you deserve Dad's money more than I do. Why your Princeton education makes you superior to my NASA career. Why your sophisticated understanding of the world means I should just accept being robbed. I'm not robbing you. $2.4 million, Alicia. That's what you're trying to steal. And you're doing it while calling me too stupid to notice. Her face went white. I never said stupid. You didn't have to. It's been implied in every conversation we've had since Dad died. Every time you patted my hand and told me not to worry about the details. Every time you said I wouldn't understand the complexities. Every time you positioned yourself as the smart one managing the confused one. Mom, I was trying to help you. No, you were trying to manipulate me. There's a difference. And now you're going to leave my house, and I'm going to continue documenting every crime you've committed. You can't prove anything. I pulled out my phone and opened my photo gallery. I can prove you drive a Porsche you claim not to own. I can prove Dr. Castellano never evaluated me. I can prove you were coordinating with someone to forge notary seals. I can prove every transaction you've made with Dad's money. Alicia grabbed her bag from the floor. You're making the biggest mistake of your life, Mom. Fighting me on this will destroy whatever relationship we have left. We don't have a relationship, Alicia. We have a fraud scheme where you're the criminal and I'm the victim. That's not a relationship worth preserving. She walked to the door, then turned back. Her face had hardened into something I barely recognized. When this goes to court, I will destroy you publicly. I'll make sure everyone knows about your cognitive decline, your inability to manage basic finances, your paranoid delusions. By the time I'm done, you'll be lucky if you're not declared legally incompetent. And when we go to court, I said quietly, I'll make sure everyone knows how a Princeton-educated lawyer thought she could defraud her NASA engineer mother and get away with it because she assumed intelligence was about degrees rather than capability. The door slammed behind her. Through the window, I watched her storm to her Porsche, the one bought with stolen money, and speed away. I opened my laptop and called Marcus Thompson. We need to accelerate the timeline. Alicia just threatened to have me declared legally incompetent. We're filing our contest next week, December 1st through December 12th. 12 days to build an unbreakable case. I approached it exactly like any NASA mission. Systematic, methodical, no room for error. Marcus Thompson's office became mission control. His conference table disappeared under spreadsheets, bank statements, legal documents, timeline charts, everything organized chronologically, cross-referenced, verified with the same precision I'd used for satellite launch sequences. "Walk me through what we have," Marcus said, pouring coffee from a thermos that had probably been sitting there since dawn. I opened my master evidence file, the digital version of the engineering notebook I'd been maintaining. 52 pieces of documentation. One for each week Alicia's been lying to me, though the fraud only spans 32 weeks. Let's start with the financial evidence. Document 1. Wells Fargo security footage from March 18, 9:47 a.m. Alicia at the teller window, making a $53,000 withdrawal using the forged power of attorney. The timestamp shows this was exactly 13 days after Dad's funeral. Document 2. The power of attorney itself, dated March 17th. Forensic handwriting analysis confirmed the signature is forged. Paper analysis showed it was printed on an HP LaserJet Pro 404 newtons, the same model Alicia uses for her law firm letterhead. The paper stock matches samples from her office printer. Document 3. Porsche Denver purchase agreement dated March 25th. $138,000 for a Taycan Turbo S, paid in cash from estate funds. The sales manager remembered Alicia specifically because she seemed unusually excited for someone who'd just lost her grandfather. Documents 4 through 11. Credit card statements from Dad's estate account showing systematic theft. Bottega Veneta bag, $18,000. Cartier watch, $23,000. Vista Casino Club charges totaling $27,000 over 8 weeks. Matsuhisa Restaurant, $73 per meal, 19 visits in 3 months. She wasn't even trying to hide it, Marcus observed, because she thought I'd never see the statements, or if I did, I'd be too cognitively impaired to understand what they meant. Document 12. Dr. Raymond Castellano's supposed psychiatric evaluation. We tracked down all 3 Dr. Castellanos in Colorado. None have any record of evaluating you. The report itself was downloaded from a legal template website, then modified with your personal information. Documents 13 through 18. Phone records showing Alicia's coordination with accomplices. 7 calls to Patricia Morales, the notary whose seal was forged. 15 calls to someone named Trevor Dunham, who runs a document services business in Aurora. 6 calls to her law school friend Bethany Chen, who works in estate planning. Document 19. The real will I found hidden in Dad's document folder, properly witnessed, properly notarized by the real Patricia Morales on January 22, 2024. Shows 50-50 split, not 1882. Documents 20 through 23. Medical records from my actual doctors proving I've never been psychiatrically evaluated. Doctor. Patricia Martinez's recent cognitive assessment showing perfect function. My NASA medical clearance from last year showing I'm approved for classified project work, something they don't give to people with dementia. Document 24. Flight records proving I was in Houston on October 18th, the date Alicia claims I met with Dr. Castellano. American Airlines Flight 2847, departing DIA at 6:32 a.m., returning at 8:15 p.m., hotel receipt from the Marriott near Johnson Space Center. Signed attendance sheet from the Satellite Systems Review Panel with 27 witnesses. The timeline contradictions are devastating, Marcus said. She's trapped herself with every lie. But I wanted more than financial proof and timeline evidence. I wanted moral documentation. Documents 25 through 31. Email chains between Alicia and her law school friends. Particularly damning was an email dated April 7th where she wrote, "Mother actually thanked me for handling everything so professionally. If she only knew how professionally I've been handling her bank account." Sometimes having an Ivy League education and a simple mother has serious financial advantages. "Deborah," Marcus said slowly, "in 26 years of legal practice, I have never seen documentation this thorough. Most clients bring me scattered receipts and vague suspicions. You've brought me a prosecutable federal case. NASA taught me something important, Marcus. When you're building systems that have to work in the harshest environment in existence, thoroughness isn't optional. It's survival." December 15th, 9 a.m., Denver Probate Court, courtroom 4 amperes. I arrived 45 minutes early, carrying 2 briefcases containing printed copies of all 52 pieces of evidence. I wore Dad's favorite blazer, the navy one he'd worn to my NASA promotion ceremony. Symbolic perhaps, but engineers understand the importance of presentation. The courtroom filled rapidly, 73 people by my count, extended family members I hadn't seen in years, some of Alicia's law school friends, my former NASA colleagues who'd flown in to support me, even Mrs. Chen from my neighborhood clutching her purse and glaring at Alicia like she'd stolen Christmas. Alicia sat at the plaintiff's table with her attorney, Richard Pemberton, a high-priced estate lawyer who charged $750 an hour. She wore her power outfit, black Armani suit, pearl earrings, the Cartier watch purchased with Dad's money. Every inch the competent professional managing her unstable mother's delusions. Marcus Thompson and I took the defendant's table. He'd organized our evidence in perfect chronological order, each piece marked with exhibit numbers and cross-reference to legal precedents. The precision would have made my NASA project managers proud. Judge Eleanor Martinez entered at 9:07 a.m., 23 years on the bench, known for her sharp legal mind and absolute intolerance for estate fraud. She looked at the packed courtroom with raised eyebrows. "This is probate court, not a public spectacle. Why do we have an audience?" Pemberton stood smoothly. "Your Honor, we've requested a closed hearing due to the sensitive nature of Miss Collins's documented mental health issues and family privacy concerns." "Mental health issues?" Judge Martinez looked at me directly. "Miss Collins, how do you respond to that characterization?" I stood, keeping my voice steady. "Your Honor, I have 52 pieces of documentation proving my daughter has committed systematic fraud against our family estate. I'd like to present them methodically, if the court permits." 52 pieces? "Yes, Your Honor. Each one authenticated, verified, and cross-referenced. I'm a systems engineer. Thoroughness is fundamental to my profession." Pemberton smirked. "Your Honor, this obsessive documentation behavior is precisely what we're addressing. No rational person needs 52 pieces of evidence for a straightforward probate matter." Judge Martinez's expression sharpened. "Counselor, in my experience, people who commit elaborate fraud tend to leave extensive evidence. Let's see what Miss Collins has compiled. Proceed." The next 90 minutes were surgical precision. Exhibit 1, the forged power of attorney. Exhibit 2, handwriting analysis. Exhibit 3, bank security footage. Exhibit 4, the Porsche purchase with estate funds. With each piece of evidence, I watched Alicia's composure deteriorate, her hands shaking, face going pale. By Exhibit 17, she was whispering frantically to Pemberton. "Your Honor," Pemberton interrupted, "we'd like to request a brief recess to consult with our client." "Denied. Continue, Miss Collins." Exhibit 23. Dad's real will showing equal 50-50 distribution. Audible gasps from the gallery. Mrs. Chen said, "I knew that girl was lying, loud enough for everyone to hear." Exhibit 31. Alicia's email to her law school friend. "Sometimes having an Ivy League education and a simple mother has serious financial advantages." Judge Martinez read it twice, her expression growing colder. "Miss Collins," she addressed Alicia directly, "did you write this email referring to your mother as simple?" Alicia stood unsteadily. "Your Honor, that was taken out of context. It was a private communication. The context appears to be you bragging about defrauding your mother because you considered her intellectually inferior." Exhibit 37. Bank records showing $487,000 transferred to Cayman Islands accounts. "Miss Alicia Collins," Judge Martinez said sharply, "did you transfer estate assets to offshore accounts before probate was finalized?" "Your Honor, those were legitimate estate preservation strategies recommended by financial advisors. Estate preservation doesn't typically involve Caribbean banking before inheritance distribution is legally determined." Exhibit 42. Security footage of Alicia meeting with document forger Trevor Dunham in the courthouse parking garage on December 3, 12 days ago. Dead silence. Even Pemberton looked stunned. "Miss Collins," Judge Martinez leaned forward, "did you meet with a known document forger in this courthouse's parking garage?" "Your Honor, I was consulting about legitimate document services." "What kind of legitimate services require parking garage meetings?" The final exhibits destroyed what remained of Alicia's defense. My medical records proving I'd never been evaluated, flight documentation showing I was in Houston when she claimed I met her fictional psychiatrist. The forensic accountant's report calculating $2.3 million in attempted theft. When I finished, the courtroom was silent except for the air conditioning hum. Judge Martinez reviewed her notes for 4 full minutes. Then she looked up at Alicia with an expression that could freeze helium. "Miss Alicia Collins, in 23 years on this bench, I have never witnessed a more systematic, calculated pattern of estate fraud. You forged legal documents. You invented psychiatric evaluations using a real doctor's name. You stole substantial sums. You attempted to have your own mother declared incompetent to cover your crimes. Your Honor," Pemberton tried to intervene, "if we could discuss a settlement arrangement." "There will be no settlement. This case is being referred immediately to the U.S. Attorney's Office for criminal prosecution. Wire fraud, forgery, elder abuse, perjury, conspiracy." She turned to me. "Miss Deborah Collins, I'm invalidating all probate documents filed by your daughter and recognizing your father's original will as the sole valid testamentary instrument. You inherit 50% of the estate, as your father intended." The gallery erupted. Someone actually applauded. "Furthermore, Miss Alicia Collins, I'm recommending immediate disciplinary proceedings with the Colorado Bar Association. Your law license is suspended effective immediately, pending criminal trial." Alicia collapsed into her chair, face in her hands. "Your Honor," I said, standing again, "I have one final statement for the record." "Yes, Miss Collins?" This case demonstrates why systematic documentation matters. My daughter assumed that Princeton education meant superior intelligence. She was wrong. Real intelligence isn't about credentials. It's about preparation, precision, and respect for truth. I looked at Alicia, still crumpled at her table. She thought I was too simple to understand her sophisticated fraud, but NASA taught me that complex systems fail when foundational assumptions are wrong. Her assumption was that her mother was stupid. Everything collapsed from there. Judge Martinez nodded. Miss Collins, your approach to evidence gathering should be taught in law schools. Court is adjourned. That's Deborah's story. A NASA engineer who proved that systematic thinking beats Ivy League arrogance every single time. A mother who showed her daughter that intelligence isn't measured by degrees, but by precision, preparation, and unwavering dedication to truth. Now, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching this from? What city? What country? Drop it in the comments below. I love seeing our global community connect over these powerful stories. Real question. If you were in Deborah's position, would you have confronted Alicia immediately? Or would you have done what Deborah did and gathered 52 pieces of evidence first? Tell me in the comments. I'm genuinely curious about your strategy. Hit that like button if this story gave you chills. Share it if you know someone who's ever been underestimated because of their age, their background, or their humble lifestyle. And subscribe for more true stories about justice, family betrayal, and the power of systematic thinking. One last thing. Team Deborah or Team Alicia? Just kidding, there's no Team Alicia here. But seriously, do you think the daughter deserved the punishment she got, or should it have been harsher? Drop your thoughts below. And if you've ever been called too simple or not sophisticated enough by someone who underestimated you, share your story in the comments. Sometimes the quietest people are the most dangerous when you cross them. Thanks for watching. Remember, intelligence isn't about where you went to school. It's about how you think, how you prepare, and how you fight when it matters most. See you in the next one.